Hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Cioffi. It's a Tuesday, August the 28th, 2018 on what has been an absolutely, I have to tell you, this is probably one of the most oppressive days that I've experienced around here. And I've experienced some pretty oppressive days, but this really, today, I don't know if it was, the humidity is just absolutely off of the wall, especially where I am on Long Island. And I'm going to show you a chart that illustrates just how humid it has been this summer in just a second, for my neck of the woods at least. And I'm sure it probably applies to areas near me as well. But the temperatures reached up into the low and mid 90s. The humidity pushed it all up with respect to how it feels. Heat indices running 105, 106, and I'm not usually a big fan of the feels like temperature concept, but I got to tell you, today it really does make a huge difference. That humidity was just completely out of control, and the wind, which was virtually non-existent, so it just basically just hung over you all day long, and walking in it, you're kind of like, I don't know, cutting through butter, it seemed. But anyway, or at least walking through a pool of water. But I want to show you the heat indices at the moment. These are off the 5 o'clock observations, and they haven't updated yet. Now, I've also included here some non-National Weather Service observations that you can add to this on some of the temperature networks that are available. And obviously the 121, there was something wrong with the thermometer. We can understand that. But, we were pushing numbers here on the order of 108 and 109. And that is astounding. And especially look around the Boston area, where temperatures made it up into the mid-90s. And you've got these heat indices up at 108, 115. Maybe that 115 is probably a little off the wall. I'm going to put up the dew points now, and we'll look at those, because they really kind of reflect the issue here, and that is the fact that the dew points have been, it's uncomfortable enough when the dew points get up into the upper 60s when it's really hot, but we've been sitting with dew points that have been running in the 70s. Now, you notice in some areas, you go just inland, it kind of drops off a little bit into the upper 60s, but right along the immediate coast with that wind off the water, and also when you look down around down to Maryland, Northern Virginia, southeastern Pennsylvania, I'm missing some numbers there in southern New Jersey, but the dew points running up in the middle 70s, just absolutely off the wall. Here's a look at, I want to look at Long Island specifically, because obviously, with its geographic location, there is going to be an ocean influence here most of the time. But this summer in particular, and especially over the last 45 days, it's just been nuts. Now, here are the heat indices as of 4 p.m. when temperatures were near their, just about at or just barely off their highs of the day, and winds were starting to go around to the southwest, but heat indices in the 105 range, and it wasn't really particularly hot in terms of temperatures, because the temperatures were mostly upper 80s to lower 90s, but the humidity has been just incredibly insane. And in fact, one of my colleagues at work went and was able to find this as a really interesting chart. This shows the number of hours. This is at Islip Airport on Long Island, which it sits right in the middle of Long Island pretty much. It's inland of the South Shore, but it's not quite up to the North Shore. It does tend to get more of a sea breeze effect than areas further north. Now, I live 2 miles northeast of MacArthur Airport, and I can tell you that there are some really wild differences that occur from time to time, especially in the wintertime and in the early part of the spring in terms of temperatures. In the wintertime, I've sat where I live 2 miles north and have snowed and held on to cold air for up to several hours before it changes over, and islip will change over, and I will snow sometimes for another 1 to 2 hours, or maybe even more than that. It takes there's almost a bit of there's like a topography wall there, because the elevation goes up once you go north of the airport. But this is the dew points, the hours, where the number of hours in a given summer, going back to now 1970, where the dew point was at or above 70. And you notice that the average, I guess if you want to kind of eyeball the average here, the average is about 200 hours, okay? So roughly the equivalent of 8 days. And then in some of the more humid summers, you've seen spikes up above 400 hours, okay, occurring. And you don't have a lot of those. And in fact, if you notice on the chart, just about any time where you've had one of these spike years, it kind of drops back closer to that 200 average. Maybe it's a little higher than 200. But the bottom line is, look at the last bar there. That yellow bar is this year, 800 hours. And I did the math. That is 33 1/3 days. If you ran those hours consecutively, 800 hours divided by 24, and you come out with 33.3 days equivalent with the dew point above 70. Now, make no mistake, it doesn't necessarily mean that things are nice and comfortable when the dew point is under 70. I would be curious to see, with respect to this, what if you use 65 as the barrier, what the numbers would come out to. But 70 is pretty high, and we actually had some 80-degree dew points that showed up today over parts of Long Island. It's just absolutely ridiculous. The humidity has been just insane. So if some of you who are watching from Long Island and places nearby that have ocean exposure or Long Island Sound exposure, if you're thinking that it seems like the humidity this summer has been exceptionally high, it actually has. You're not dreaming this. It actually is the case. Now, let's move on to what's going on tonight across the upper Midwest, because we have an outbreak of some heavy thunderstorms and severe weather in northern Illinois and back through Wisconsin. And you can see the rather impressive looking satellite loop showing the thunderstorms that are still kind of in blossoming mode here, and the radar picks up on these very well. Here's the radar view. Again, as I always like to tell you, I'll just say it right now. If you're watching this on a replay tonight, this is as of 6:05 Eastern Time, 5:05 Central Time. So be sure to check your local radars from your local National Weather Service office, and you can do that by going to weather.gov. There's one area of strong thunderstorms, and I'm going to pull up the Chicago radar here. And these storms actually, on the latest radar view, the ones that were in Illinois, they've kind of petered out just a little bit. We do have a ton of warnings up to the north, and we're going to jump over to that. But it looks like, at least from the standpoint of the storms that were in Illinois, they've suddenly weakened as they've moved eastward. Now, up we go, up toward further north. And you can see we've got severe thunderstorm and flash flood warnings that are up along the western shores of Lake Michigan, south of Green Bay. Although I should go to the let's see if I go this way, what do we get? Okay, the Milwaukee radar, which kind of extends out further to the west, so you can see some more of these storms. Got a lot of severe thunderstorm warnings. The red, actually, I believe, is a tornado warning, so I take it back. The green is the flash flood warning. But there you go with these warnings, with these cells that moved on through. I'm going to double check on the, let me just double check really fast here. They took them down. Let me just make sure we have. Okay, there were tornado warnings that were up. Flash flood warnings cover that green area, so I was indeed correct there. That red that you saw Sometimes I get mixed, the different color schemes from map to map, and they keep, they switch back and forth. But yes, we've got severe thunderstorm. There were tornado warnings up here, up north of Milwaukee, but those are done. Flash flood warnings remain in areas as you go to the west. So it's very, very busy here on the radar as of 6:07 p.m. Eastern Time, 5:07 Central. Now, with respect to where we're going weather-wise here, let me just come back to the radar, because while all of this is going on, I'm going to go back to the full U.S. view. There we go. With respect to the action that's going on today across this area, there's a enhanced risk of severe weather by the Storm Prediction Center for this. So they put that up for this during this morning. There's nothing going on in the Northeast. We've got a little bit of activity in the Southeast. Kind of busy today over the west shores of Florida, getting hit around the Tampa-St. Pete area, getting hit with some pretty hefty thunderstorms, and then going northwest from there up and around the Panhandle, and also some activity in parts of Louisiana. Was a little bit busier earlier, and in southeastern Texas. So the Gulf states, the southern areas of the Gulf states, getting back into afternoon and evening thunderstorm mode. And here's the southern extent of the strong thunderstorms that cut across Iowa and on up into northwestern Missouri. Okay, let's jump now to the tropics. Before we get to everything that's going on with respect to local weather, as far as the Atlantic is concerned, we've got still a rather the activity out in the Atlantic of disturbed weather is rather on the anemic side, but we are beginning to see, we mentioned this the last couple of days, we're starting to see waves that are beginning to move off the African coast, have a little bit more punch to them, and there's one that's on land at the moment that's going to be moving off over the weekend, and that might have an opportunity to become organized as it moves westward. Looks like conditions are going to be conducive for development, and we do have a bit more of a favorable profile going on in the eastern Atlantic with the decrease in the amount of Saharan dust, and the water temperatures, even though they're running a shade below average, remember that's a completely different thing to say with regards to water temperatures. Yeah, they're a little bit below average, but they are above threshold to support tropical storm development, and also as they come further west, they would be above the threshold to support hurricane strength. So those are two different things when you look at the actual sea surface temperatures and when we're talking the anomaly. The anomaly is perhaps going to slow the intensification process. Perhaps it would keep a storm from getting to a higher strength, as opposed to a year where you have exceptionally warm water like we did last year, but it doesn't stop tropical systems from developing. All the water down here is certainly warm enough to support tropical storm development. And now we can at least, I want to go to the European model. I'll just show you. The models all seem to start spinning things up out in the tropical Atlantic. Now, the European has been the most bullish on this view versus the other models. And I'll show you here. Now, this is starting from Thursday, so I'm just kind of jumping ahead a little bit. And you'll see there's a wave that actually pops off on Friday and moves just over the southern Cabo Verde Islands and then moves to the west-northwest. Also, the European right now is the only one left. The other models they were doing this overnight, but they kind of backed off on this. But they pick up on some kind of weak tropical wave that begins to flare up early next week in the Bahamas, and then moves it into the Gulf of Mexico toward the central Gulf Coast. Nothing here is to be taken literally. There's you should never use these maps ever with respect to decision making, especially when we're talking about the long term. I think the takeaway here is that the European is signaling that the Atlantic basin is going to be more active. Now, whether that first wave that's in the Bahamas develops or not remains to be seen. I kind of looked at the, when I look at the upper air, it does, whenever I see that the upper ridge kind of pushes up northward into the central Appalachians, where you get an easterly flow in the Gulf, from the Bahamas into the Gulf of Mexico, you do tend to have lower than normal pressures in this area. So that tends to make things a bit more favorable for tropical storm formation in instances like this. And we do sort of hold on to this on the European with the upper ridge pushing northward into the Ohio Valley through the middle of next week. So it might be supportive here for something to, if there's an identifiable, even a weak identifiable tropical wave, that it may move into an area where conditions could be conducive. But it's got to get there first, and we're talking at least 5 days away before it even becomes relevant. We're again looking here at the 18,000 foot level, so we're looking at the 500 millibar level. I want to go back to the surface map here, and we'll use the normal anomaly. But you can see, even going through at the 240 hours, it just gets busy here. The model, the European, is not taking any one of them and intensifying it into some, off the walls hurricane. But we know that in both directions, sometimes the models have a tough time with tropical storms in both directions in figuring out strength. They can be way too deep, in other words, way too intense, or they can be not intense enough. And if you look at the GFS, by the way, the GFS just seems to key on one system here in the tropical Atlantic out at 126 hours. This is the first one, so this is the new GFS. So it looks like it's actually a little more bullish with this on the new GFS as it comes off the African coast and then passes just south of the Cabo Verde Islands. And it actually drops the pressure down to 989 millibars. So the new GFS, at least out through day 5, doesn't match up that badly with the European. I'll bring the European map. European's got the same thing here out in the tropical Atlantic. And for laughs, the Canadian also has it. So all three seem to suddenly want to get this first wave and develop it to some degree. So we may have something to pay attention to as we get into the weekend. And then, of course, the Canadian did not do anything with any kind of system on this run in the Gulf of Mexico. Just basically has an east-southeast flow there. And the GFS, the new GFS, is not out far enough. The old GFS didn't do anything with this either. So didn't do anything with a system in the Gulf of Mexico. But for now, we only have out, as we said, to 132 hours. So we can come back. Let's go back to the U.S. We'll go to the full U.S. view and take a look at what's going to be happening here weather-wise. And we are waiting for a cold front. So we've got another 2 days of ridiculous humidity and temperatures in the 90s. Although Thursday there'll be more clouds around, so I think that'll hold temperatures down somewhat. Here's your outbreak of severe weather going into tonight. That's going to extend across northern Michigan and on northeastward. Low pressure moving into southeastern Canada. So there's the next cold front that really doesn't get to the coast until sometime late Thursday afternoon or Thursday evening. I don't know that there's going to be much in the way of severe weather with this. From what I looked at, I was looking at models a bit closer today with respect to this, and they didn't really, knock my socks off with respect to severe weather on the runs today. That next high is going to create at least an onshore flow down up into down to the Delmarva Peninsula into northern Virginia. There will probably be some showers as a result of this, but this does not look like it's going to be any kind of big widespread rain. You're still basically in a ridge position here in the eastern part of the United States, so you don't really have a cold upper trough like you did back through those three events we had in August with the deep troughs to the west of the coast that produced tons and tons of rain. So it does appear that at least it will make things cooler in my neck of the woods, although it'll still probably be humid. And after that, the front tries to come back up as a warm front for Sunday and Monday, so that's going to mean that there will be some showers and thunderstorms running around. It doesn't mean that we're going to have a washout, just that I think you have to include the chances for showers and storms being scattered around. And I don't see us returning to really, really hot temperatures, although we certainly could go back up into the 80s and maybe even middle to upper 80s as we head in toward Monday, Labor Day in particular. And after that, as we go forward, we are going to see fronts starting to come down. There's one at the end of next week that has, at least from the GFS's viewpoint, a push of drier air. But even that one winds up going into southeastern Canada, so you get the onshore flow set up again. So you have to wonder whether the models, which sometimes like to typically overdo these things when you're looking at them 7 or 8 days in advance, and then when you get into real time, the highs are not as pronounced. We are getting to the time of year where these highs should start to get a bit stronger, but it's back to the onshore flow and then another front coming through as we all of a sudden now we're almost to the middle of September on the on the GFS in the long range. And when we examine the upper air, I kind of think what we're seeing here, as far as the upper air is concerned, that we are, at least across Canada, things seem to be getting, let's call it transitional, starting to move chess pieces around. Where they wind up, we don't know, but the upper air certainly getting a bit of a colder, let's say late summer, early autumn look to it. And as we go through the next 7 days and beyond, flat ridge that runs from off the Pacific coast eastward through pretty much the southern part of the U.S., off the east coast. The ridge is not popping up. It's not built up into southeastern Canada, but you just basically have this long east-west ridge. So the edge of the westerlies are fairly far to the south, down to about central New Jersey. The ridge will flex and then weaken. That seems to be the pattern, and you've got short waves that are dropping from the flow in Canada, but none of them seem to be making any real dent as far as the ridge is concerned. Hang on 1 second, folks. Let's see if we can do this. Jeffrey, I have you on live.
What?
So hang on a second. I'm going to get some volume in here.
It's hot.
Talk to me.
It's hot.
It is hot.
I'm sweating. I've been working on the house, working out in the yard all day, so I'm only giving you the neck up shot.
Okay, very good. Let me just, first of all, let me make sure you're showing up on the screen here, and you are. And my audience is going to let me know if they can hear you loud and clear. So they're always very helpful with that. And let me, okay, so let me get you on the screen. So you're cooling off. This is my everybody. This is my colleague Jeff Banson, who I work with at FiOS 1 News, and he's on mornings with meteorologist Brian Fitzgerald. So Jeffrey gets to go home early and spend the afternoon trying to cool off. Are you hosing yourself down, or you have your own version of an obnoxiously large swimming pool?
I have, here, I'll try to flip around so you can see the backyard. I'm not sure if you can flip around with this camera. Oh, you can. So this is my not so obnoxiously large backyard, but there could be an obnoxiously large swimming pool here one day. Who knows? But this is my new house, and we just had landscapers come, and I was doing some yard work, tilling, and hold on.
Then you could get into underneath the obnoxiously shady tree that's in the back.
Right, and the obnoxiously large propane tank that you see right there.
Yeah, well, let's be careful with the propane tank.
Right.
So, Jeffrey, you saw that dew point chart earlier. I put it up for everybody to see. Are you still with me?
Yeah, can you keep talking? I'm going to put you down for 2 seconds, but keep talking.
Okay, so I'm going to bring the dew point chart back up. Oh, there you go. Excellent. So it's been everybody's perception that I've spoken to. And by the way, I'm on my YouTube audience, so we're talking to people from all over the place. But it was my perception, and a lot of people's perception, that this particular summer has been more humid than past summers. And
absolutely.
And this chart really kind of definitely bears that out. Okay, you still there, Jeffrey? I'm hearing a piano. Hang on. We're losing you, bud. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Your voice is... I don't know what's going on, bud. Okay, what are you doing?
Give 1 second. Sorry.
All right. It sounds like you're playing a piano.
Yeah, I don't know where that is. No.
Okay, this is kind of getting a little ridiculous. What are you doing? I guess we had some interference there, folks. I tried. I tried. I don't always succeed, but I try. Anyway, let's just go back. I'm going to just go back to this upper air and finish that off. This is what happens when you do live streams. You try to try to ad lib stuff. But anyway, the jet stream in Canada at least appears to be busy enough that it's going to it's going to be sending weather fronts through from time to time. I would like to think that the oppressive nature of what we have now, that we won't see another 3 or 4 day stretch again. But until that ridge completely gets out of the way in the eastern part of the U.S., I'm just going to have to be, as always, a little bit skeptical with regards to where we are with all of this going forward. So let me just come back to the screen here, and all right. So I see you guys are on. I know didn't it sound like a piano, Dank Legend? I mean, and that's a great name, by the way. Perfect name during the humidity stuff. All right, he's trying again. Let's see what we can do here. Hold on. Yes, Jeffrey.
Sorry about that, everyone. We're good now.
Hold on a second. First of all, what were you doing?
I had to go in the house. The cable guy was here, and he was asking me, because he had been on hold doing something himself for like an hour, and he finally, I guess, finished it, and he needed me to try the password just to make sure that it worked, so he could leave. I'm good now.
You got the cable guy. That's it's the most important. All right, let's talk. Let's go back and talk weather. We were talking about the fact that everybody's perception is that it's been more humid this summer, and that chart that I put up earlier certainly bears that out.
Yeah, that chart is really, if you think about it. Now, I know a lot of people. I feel like seasons come and seasons go, and it really, whether it's one thing or the other, it's really the people's perception that matters. So, just last week, I was in the news meeting, and I was talking about, how we've had a pretty pretty humid summer. Certainly by the chart you posted with the dew points with what we meteorologists consider very humid. Dew points in the range of 60 to 70, that's humid. Anything over 70, I think the best word to use is tropical. And so days with 70 or higher dew points this summer, I believe it's been almost half of the summer days so far. I believe it was, Joe, if you could correct me if I'm wrong, but 35 out of 76.
That came out, yeah, I mean, that works out, if you do the straight division with the numbers, it works out to 33 days.
Okay.
And that's a lot. And when you look, I kind of was eyeballing the chart. It looked like the average was somewhere, the average summer was more like 200, 300, 300 hours, let's say 250 to 300 hours. So this is more than double what it usually is. And, there have been spikes along the way, but I guess from at least at Iceland, we can certainly say it's the most humid summer we've had in 50 years.
It's incredible. It's incredible. But, the point I was making before, so I went to the news meeting and I was talking about how it's been so humid. And, well, then people were saying, yeah, but it's been a really rainy summer. It hasn't been a great summer. And I said, well, it really depends on what you define as a great summer. Do you define a great summer as dry, sunny days, not too hot, not too cool? Do you define a great summer as not being too hot, being rather cool, rather below average temperature-wise? Or do you consider a great summer hot and humid, feeling like Florida, so you have a plethora of beach and pool days? I would tend to lean towards the latter there. I mean, probably not as many humid days as this, but certainly if you wanted to go to the beach, if you wanted to hop in the pool, man, you've had your pick of the litter of days this summer.
Well, the dew points above 70 and temperatures above 90 are two totally separate issues. Because when you look at the number of 90-degree plus days, that's been kind of average. But we also had a very long stretch, in those weeks where we had those three troughs that set up to the west that brought all of the rain that we wound up having. I mean, we literally sat in dew points in the 70s for days and days at a time. I think we went almost 2 weeks, over 2 weeks without any kind of significant break in any of the dew points. What do you think? Just in general. I just want to switch over because we were talking about the tropics, and it looks like the models continue to show activity picking up on the Atlantic side in the next couple of weeks. I kind of go along with the idea, if only because of the fact that it just can't stay quiet forever. It's got to do it. And one of my regulars on here, Anthony Orr, who loves to go into statistics, pointed out that back in August of '61 there were no named storms in the entire month of August of '61. We've had two, but none. And the September that followed in '61 was an absolute explosion of activity with hurricane after hurricane in that year. So just because it's been inactive doesn't necessarily mean it's going to stay that way.
No, I was actually having this conversation with one of the gentlemen that came to my house earlier who's a big weather fan. So we had a nice little chat about that and how it has been a relatively quiet hurricane season. We had, two named storms that were fish storms. You've had more hurricane or post-hurricane activity in Ireland this year than you have here in the East Coast, which is pretty incredible when you think about it, how we are now under the 2-week mark. We are about 10 days. Actually, I believe it's like 13 days, but until the halfway point of hurricane season, which is September 10th. So that is, the fact that we've had such few storms, and granted, we don't typically get a lot of activity up this way, being, the East Coast, the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast. We don't typically get a lot of activity in the earlier parts of hurricane season, June, July, even a good portion of August. It's not really till we get to that halfway part, and then late September, early October, as evidenced by Sandy, late October, even at that late in the hurricane season, where we start to pick up in intensity. And you'd have to assume that it's going to start to begin to do just that pretty soon.
I just brought up the I've got the new GFS up just to show everybody, and my audience knows that when we look at this stuff in the longer range, that you don't really focus too literally on what it's happening, but it does have you do see the system that it comes off the African coast over the weekend, late Friday, Saturday. This particular run does actually develop it as it moves it west-northwest. Whatever's going on in the Atlantic, I don't know with respect to how much shear is there going to be, how much Saharan dust might still be running around in some in patches in some places. That I think is one of the big questions,
right,
among many.
It was really cool to see. I saw something on Twitter a couple of weeks ago. The last time we did have a named tropical system. If you could refresh my memory, Joe, what was the last named storm? It was storm.
It was Ernesto.
Ernesto?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And it was a picture of it out in the Atlantic. And simultaneously, it was getting both Saharan dust and California wildfire smoke.
Amazing, isn't it?
Drawn in on both sides. And it's just incredible to think, that many thousands of miles apart, that could be going on. Whether or not that's going to have an effect on storms coming up, like you said, I'm not really sure on that either. But this is the time of year you really get those African waves coming off the coast, riding along the northern fringe of the intertropical convergence zone.
Which has been very, up until now, has been incredibly anemic in terms of what's been out there. Waves have been very, very weak. The other issue, I think, is whether, there's there are weak tropical waves that you can barely find them on the satellite loops, but the European does try to flare something up in the western Bahamas and take it into the Gulf of Mexico on its run today, and over the last several runs it's done that. The other models have kind of backed away from it, but this is getting to that time of year, going into the Labor Day weekend. This is what we usually have statistically the peak activity, although it hardly ever falls on that particular date. But nothing would going forward now. I think it's going to be a day-to-day thing, just to watch to see how these waves react as they move off the coast. We have the strong shear, the strong winds that have been blowing across the Caribbean. That's going to be that's another issue. Is the shear going to be overwhelming, as it can be sometimes? That we don't. We'll see. We'll find that out. Quick, just real quick. I was kind of thinking that, at least from the standpoint of Friday and Saturday, onshore wind, clouds and not out of the 70s, and maybe some passing showers, but no washout, and then warm and humid after that for Sunday and Monday, with the odd shower or thunderstorm here and there. I'm thinking you're on the same page.
I am. I've been tracking. I'm always tracking the weather pretty closely, but a little closer than usual this week, because I'm actually going to be having. Not only am I turning 30 this weekend, but having just closed on this house in the last month. Yay!
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you very much. Back to Long Island.
Keep your checkbook out. All right.
It has been busy. It has been busy recently. But we're gonna have something this weekend. Of course, consecutive days of 90 degrees humidity. It's good and it's bad. One token, it's great that people aren't going to have to be out here, baking. But at the same time, I also want it to be dry. So it's kind of give a little, take a little. I'll take 75. I'll take mostly cloudy as long as it can stay dry. And like you said, no washouts. So that's good news. I mean, we'll still have a couple of tents out here just in case.
This is the Labor Day weekend's the last. Well, it's the last. Let's call it the last vacation weekend. With some schools actually started this week, and they've been pushing the start dates back earlier and earlier. But some schools in some districts in Connecticut, southeastern Pennsylvania. They actually started this week, and then they gave early dismissals because of the heat if their schools don't happen to be air conditioned. But the summer.
Brian and I Brian and I were just talking about that very thing this morning, and we're saying, listen, if it's this hot just outside where you actually are having, at least to get some airflow, if it's that hot there, imagine how hot it is in a lot of these classrooms that may not have AC yet. It's just got to be an oven, and we were discussing that same thing.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. Happy birthday!
Thank you.
You're turning 30, and I'm turning twice 30.
Well, you know what? Just to put it in perspective, by the time I make my last payment, I should say, on this bad boy right here, I will be turning 60.
You'll be turning 60, and you'll be listening to my eulogy somewhere, or someone giving a eulogy about me. What's that?
I have a feeling you'll still be kicking
at 90.
Yeah, why not? People live twice that this day and age.
Maybe I'll still be live streaming here on my YouTube channel.
Are you one of those people that doesn't believe in modern medicine? Because as long as you do, I think you'll be here.
Well, no. I'm one of those people that does not take something for every every little thing that happens. For me to take an aspirin, I have to be really, really suffering, and then I find that when I do, it works. But I'm not somebody that has for every little twitch, they run to the medicine cabinet. But when I've got on the occasion that I've required something stronger that the doctor is given me, I do take it.
Right.
I know some people don't, but I'm sorry.
No, I'm with you. I don't like taking an Advil for every little thing because I don't want to have to eventually be someone that needs to take 3 or 4 just to, get a little relief. I like taking 1, maybe 2, and it doing its job.
All right. So look, go put on a shirt. All right.
I'm just showering and going to bed. I got mosquitoes. We just treated mosquitoes. We got to get the tiki torches out.
Yeah. So. Well, wait till the fall, and you got to get your bags to get all those leaves that you're going to have from those fallen trees. So go do what you got to do, and I will. All right, I guess he's going.
Nope.
Are you flipping the camera? Yeah, you got some tall trees with a lot of leaves back there. All right, Jeffrey.
All right, Joe.
Got to call it a day because pretty soon I'm going to go, and I want to come back to my audience. Thanks for jumping on. At least I was able to check the equipment here with respect to the live stream.
Good. Worked well.
It worked well. All right, take care, pal.
All right, guys. Good night. Thanks.
All right, Jason Schaefer, happy birthday to you because you're going to turn 29 tomorrow. Congratulations. Happy birthday. The G Normal Florida. Last time was 53. 50-year cells were overdue for one big hurricane. Joe, August has been quiet. September, October, November, it comes live. Oh, thank you. Well, you know what? The activity certainly is what the models are showing, definitely picking up on the latest runs. So I think we're going to start to see some of this stuff really get going. And the fact that the El Nino is still in a neutral position probably lends support to the idea that we will see, maybe we'll wind up with a more active September than average. It's going to be, I doubt we're going to go to the level of what we had last year with, Harvey was going on last year at this time, and then we had Irma and Maria, and of course the ocean, the systems that wound up staying out in the open waters. So, I doubt we're going to have, category 4 and then 3 category 5 hurricanes because Jose stayed out to sea, but that briefly attained category 5 status. But you know what? Still, we could wind up with 1 or 2 fairly strong storms going into the month of September. That wouldn't be a shock. I don't know about the severe weather risk this weekend, Michael Bologna. I'm kind of leaning against it. I think that the showers are going to be more scattered in nature. I don't think we're going to wind up having to deal with a severe weather situation anytime over the next 5 days. Although there might be some storms coming through late Thursday. At this time, I'm leaning against the idea of those storms being severe. All right, folks, listen, got to go. It's coming up on 6:40. Remember from earlier, make sure you check the latest radar and latest warnings with regards to severe weather at your local National Weather Service office. You can access that by going to weather.gov. Also, when it comes to hurricanes and tropical storms, please remember that you can consult your local National Weather Service office or the National Hurricane Center, or if you're watching from Hawaii, the Central Pacific Hurricane Center, regarding decisions that you might have to make with the tropical systems. And also just want to mention really quick that you can support my YouTube channel by shopping on Amazon and using Ebates, and you can find those links on the descriptor of this video and live stream. We are a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for us to earn fees by linking to Amazon and their affiliated sites, and the same goes with Ebates. So thank you very much for those of you who have used it. The Joe and Joe Weather Show tonight will be live on Facebook at roughly 9:15, and you can access that by going to my Facebook page, Meteorologist Joe Cioffi, or on Joe Rayo's Facebook page, Joe Rayo Weather. Have a great evening, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.